Some things the Vikings did are still whispered about in the north. The fate of the wives of their defeated enemies was unspeakable. What happened behind the longhouses and shields would haunt generations. War was not just about gold or land. It was about power, fear, and control. When a village fell, victory wasn't measured in swords raised, but in what came next. The women, wives, daughters, mothers, were considered prizes and warnings. But not every tale was about cruelty for cruelty's sake. Some acts were ritual, some were survival, some were choices made under the shadow of terror. Yet the memory of these events shaped lives in ways even the fiercest warriors could not undo. Why were some spared and others broken? What determined whether a woman became a pawn or vanished into silence forever? And what did the Vikings believe about honor, shame, and the eyes that would watch long after the battle? The first step was always the silence. The village lay in ruin. Smoke rose from burned roofs. Inside, the women huddled together, hearts pounding. Some fled, but the Vikings were precise, relentless. Captives were sorted. Those deemed useful were taken. Others were left to the cold, the forest, or the river. The strongest among them, women skilled with fire or blade, were often treated differently. A sharp mind, a steady hand, could make a difference. Some were made household servants. Others were forced into marriages to cement power. A man might claim a widow not for love, but to show dominance over the fallen. Fear was everywhere. Not just the fear of death, but the fear of shame. For the Vikings, honor was sacred, and losing it could follow someone even beyond death. The women understood this. They watched as husbands were executed, sons carried away, and neighbors vanished. Each act of submission or resistance carried consequences. Some captives were traded for goods or favors.
Good.
Some became part of the family they had once feared. And yet whispers tell of women who resisted, silent refusals, hidden acts of defiance. Even in captivity, survival was a form of quiet rebellion. And then there were the rituals no outsider would see. Women were sometimes brought before feasts, their presence a reminder of what had been taken. They were witnesses to stories of glory and death. The old beliefs spoke of power, luck, and the eyes of the gods. Failing these invisible tests could mark a life forever. As days passed, some women adapted. Some vanished into new roles, new homes, new names. Some refused, clinging to memory, to loyalty, to vengeance. And others simply disappeared. Not in stories, not in songs, only in the silence left behind. By the time the village was empty, the landscape was changed, not just by fire and steel, but by the weight of fear and memory. The children who had watched, hidden behind walls or under beds, carried these lessons forward. The women who survived bore the invisible scars of choice, of coercion, and of endurance. The consequences lingered long after the Vikings sailed away. Families were fragmented. communities broken. Some women rebuilt lives, but the memory of what they had witnessed never faded. Fear became inherited. Silence became a shield. The victors wrote the history, but the survivors carried the truth in whispers. Power had a cost, and cruelty was not always senseless. It reinforced hierarchy, loyalty, and obedience. But for those who had lost, the cost was far higher than anyone could measure. Even the strongest women, who had endured the impossible, knew that the world would never see their story as it truly was. And in the quiet moments, when the wind blew across the ruins of their villages, the ghosts of the past seemed almost tangible. The echoes of fear, honor, and survival intertwined in ways the living could not escape. What became of the women who resisted? Some say they vanished into forests, rivers, or the lands beyond the fjords. Some say they returned, bearing stories the Vikings would never hear. And some say their eyes still watched, waiting, remembering every act of cruelty, every broken vow. History tells one story, but the silence, the unseen, and the unspeakable linger far longer.